Let me just say that where things are right now is we're waiting on getting what the governor's office is calling a framework that will draft a bill. So kind of the way that is scheduled to roll out is that there'll be a framework released that kind of gives all of us an idea of what that bill is going to have in it. The bill itself takes, 2 or 3 weeks to write, and just the latest of what I'm hearing is that the special session would be the week of the October 30th through November the 3rd, because I'm told even though they only have one bill, it takes 5 days for that business to all take place, okay? I can tell you, based on more just anecdotal information that I have, that what we're doing is helping. It's helping with some potential change in this bill. I think sometimes we sit here and we really get disengaged, or we think we're helpless. That's probably a better term, that we can't do anything. And I will submit to you, I don't think that's the case. And I'm just going to tell you where I am on this. I was sitting, let's see, in that seat right there a couple weeks ago, Wednesday evening, when the guy from Teachers Retirement was here. Some of you may have been here to listen to him. And he did everything he could do within the bounds of what he's allowed to do. What I'm doing today is completely outside of the bounds of what he could do. And so when I was sitting right here, I knew all the things that I knew, yet they were not getting said that evening, and I thought, I can't sit here anymore. I can't sit here another minute without trying to do something here. And so, everything you see now is kind of a result of me sitting right there that night. Now, let me kind of tell you a little bit about what's ahead for us and what we're doing here as a district. So tomorrow, can everyone hear me okay? All right, if you can't, just let me know. Tomorrow evening, I'm doing the same thing here over at Apollo High School with their faculty. Burns Middle School and all of the West County elementary schools have been invited to attend. I'm thinking now it's possible Thursday, the area superintendents. So the other thing I've decided to do is I've asked others if they'd be willing to join in with me. So the superintendents, and they've agreed. So the superintendents from Hancock County, Ohio County, McLean County, Muhlenberg County, and of course Dr. Brake and I will be writing an In Our View. Usually it's In My View, but it's going to be called In Our View, that will be in the newspaper. And so it will, we're limited on how much we can include there in terms of verbiage. So we're dealing with a little bit of a box on that, but it's a way for us to try to put this out in front of the general public. And I'm hopeful, because the next thing I'm going to tell you is Friday we're doing a press conference. Owensboro Schools has agreed to host this at Sutton Elementary School, and those same 6 superintendents will be there, and we'll have the Evansville news stations, the local press there as well. And so I'm hopeful that that generates not only print coverage, but news coverage, video coverage that will be on television, all with the idea of trying to get our message out, okay? But here's where you come in. There are plenty of opportunities for you to be engaged in this process. From contacting legislators, you can do that by phone, you can leave them messages, you can email them, you can write letters to the editor, to the newspaper, and you certainly have a very free media available to you, and Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, whatever, when it gets beyond Facebook and Twitter, I sort of lose my head there a little bit, okay? But there are different avenues there. And so we've got a web page, district web page. Ms. Wimsit's helped me out with this, but if you go to our front page on our web page, all the resources we've sent you by email, talking points, there's 2 flyers on there, my PowerPoint presentation. As soon as our In Our View gets ready to publish, we'll put that on there. And as we continue to get any more resources that we think will be helpful to you and us, then we'll make sure we try to make those things available. But that's going to be sort of our central repository, if you will, for all things retirement, okay? I want to tell you all that stuff on the front end because I might forget later on as we progress through this PowerPoint. These are the 8 different pension plans that are public pensions in Kentucky, all right? And I've circled the 2 that are relevant to us, that being the CERs non-hazardous and the teacher's plan. And then I've circled to the right the percentage number you see there. And that is the percentage that those respective retirement plans are funded based upon what the actual projected cost will be of all the pensions if they were to be paid out. Essentially, this is a good way to explain this. So if I look at non-hazardous, essentially they've got 59% of the funds if everybody that could retire retired today, okay, that's in that whole system. And even people that are working that, frankly, they're not eligible to retire. It's just a projected benefit that those individuals would have. All right? So you can sort of see a little bit of delineation here if you look at this. If you look at the first one at the very top, that is, and you can't see this real well, but that's state non-hazardous. So all of those are individuals who work directly for state government. Most of them work in Frankfort, okay, where all the state government is headquartered and it's the capital. Some of them work in places like Madisonville for the Department of Transportation. So, but they're direct employees of the state government. If you look at that number to the far right, you think, oh my gosh, that's 16% funded. And so you hear terms like crisis, okay? Well, that would be the epitome of a crisis, okay? It's at 16%. Funded. State police, you see at 30% funded. That's at a crisis point, okay? If I'm in either one of those 2 funds, I'm really having trouble sleeping at night, knowing that my pensions may or may not going to be available to me. But then after you get past that, you see some of the others that I would term in a different category, and I call those problems, because we certainly have a pension problem. Even with teachers' retirement at almost 55%, that's a problem that must be corrected. Okay, it's how it's corrected that I'm going to talk to you a bit about here today. And these numbers are in millions, but the real numbers are in billions. Okay, so if you look at Kentucky teachers' retirement system, we're $14.5 billion underfunded. All right, to meet all the actuarial cost of that pension system that we have, we're $14.5 billion short. And we are the largest number, but we're the largest pension system in terms of assets. Okay, so if I were to show you a picture of the asset side of this, it would look the exact same way. We would have all the assets and then on down the line. But when you see that number that's printed at $14.5 billion, that is correct. Based on the underfunded calculation, again, of being 54.6%. Now, here's some key points, and then what I'm going to do is talk about each individual system here momentarily. But the retirement points that I have is, first of all, you hear a lot of things about how the actuary, and incidentally, an actuary is someone who projects cost. It's very common in the pension industry as well as in the insurance industry. You have actuaries that project a cost because, you know, if you think of it this way, everything from the new hire that we have that was just employed this year to the person that's 27 years, plus people that are already drawing retirement, somebody has to sit down and calculate that, okay, to say how much money does this system need? Well, that somebody's called an actuary, okay? And so that individual makes that calculation, or that company makes that calculation. There's several different ways of doing that methodology. I'm not an expert on it. I can just tell you that that's kicked around and debated. And so many times what I've been reading is that the legislators, some of those in the governor's office, want to blame this on the calculations, okay, which frankly, it has some to do with it. I'm not going to say it has nothing to do with it, but it pales in comparison by the fact that the adequate amount of money has not been placed into the retirement funds over time. That's the critical piece here. It's not how it was calculated and all those kind of things. Some of those assumptions matter. I'm not going to say they don't. It's just not as big as that point number 1 up there. Okay? Now, you see what's underlined is this has spanned multiple administrations. All right? This is not a new problem, you all. Okay? Now, the crisis that we have in a couple of these funds, it is a crisis, and it has to be fixed for lots of different reasons. But this has spanned multiple administrations, multiple different political parties, okay? But now we have a group of individuals that are in Frankfort now that are making this decision, and they're looking at this, okay? Trying to make some shift moving forward. The second point there is what I see as the providing or prevailing concern here is that there's a major focus on shifting the risk. Les is concerned about the cost and what's going to happen. The state wants to be absolved completely from this risk, meaning right now they have all of our pension plans, all these pension plans are on their books. And push comes to shove, if the 16% fund I showed you goes belly up, the state's responsible and on the hook for that under the law. What they want to do is try to move that to a different system, what's called a defined contribution system or a DC system, so that they do not have that liability. They want to shift the liability over on us as the individuals, okay? Whatever that 401k does is what your retirement is. If it does nothing, then guess what? There's where you are. So that's the motive or initiative that they have, is to try to shift that risk. Well, what I have is really a deep concern for what I call beyond the economic issue here of the day. What I have a concern for is the public policy that's going to be enacted out of this. One is, right off the top, is the recruitment of teachers or employees into working for schools, school district, and to be a teacher, okay? Real deep concern for that. When you have an abundance of different career choices, when you lose a major benefit like this, it's going to have a tsunami impact in terms of the profession. It's just, that's logical, okay? I think to think otherwise would be very illogical. The other thing that goes hand in hand with that is the retention of employees, because you know, as you get through, let's say 10 years, maybe not even that, 9 years of experience, you know, you start looking at other things and the grass starts to look greener, okay? Dollar signs are a little bit bigger and all kinds of different things start to be attractive to an individual. But the one thing that we've had that would really retain people in our business is the fact that there's a good retirement and there's an option to retire, you know, a little bit earlier in life than, say, 65, okay? So that retention piece is enormous, particularly with a younger crowd of teacher that will be coming into our profession. You know, we're already seeing that, you know, they see green grass a whole lot sooner than I did, and perhaps some of you all did. And so that carrot there will certainly play a major factor in this. The other thing I have concerns about with some of what's in the PFM report that I'm hearing is there's a great deal of attachment by the leadership to this, is the age issue. And I go back to whether it's a teacher, whether it's a fireman, whether it's a police officer, there is an age issue that creeps up on all of us, okay? There's nobody here exempt from Father Time, okay, me included. And as Father Time rolls forward, things change, okay? My health is not as good. I don't get around quite as easily. This is the youth business. This is the kid business. And there comes to be a point in time where, you know, from just a reality standpoint, that changes. You know what? Those people that are out there, okay, that have kids in our system, they won't like that, okay? That won't sell very well, to have a 65-year-old person trying to get down in the floor. As I've used this example before, you all have seen the commercial. I've fallen and I can't get up, okay? Well, that's the 65-year-old lady who tries to get down on the floor with her kindergarten teachers, or excuse me, kindergarten students, and she can't get up. She's literally calling the office saying, I'm falling and I can't get up, okay? So those are public policy issues. You know, none of us want the firefighter that's going to come to our house when it's on fire and he's 65 and he can't get up on the roof, okay? Or the policeman that you call because your house has been robbed and the guy's running out of the house and Barney Fife pulling up can't catch him, okay? It's just not going to happen, okay? And those are public issues that the taxpayer's not going to like either, okay? That's the other side of the coin. I don't want any tax, but then again, I don't want that level of service either, because that's not acceptable. So the solutions, again, according to the report that's issued by PFM, the company that the governor paid $1.2 million to write this report, okay, does not deal with any of that, okay? That's debt, okay? It's there, all right? And because of this last piece, the inviolable contract, thank God we have that, okay? Because if we didn't have that, I'm afraid of maybe what might be tried, you know, someone might try to do to us, okay? But the inviolable contracts, is KRS 61692, basically says that there's a large guarantee in our retirement that cannot be taken away from us, okay? That's very significant. It's a big trump card that we have to play in our hand. Does that mean they can't change some things? No, it does not. There are some things, particularly in the teacher's retirement realm, that are not subject to the inviolable contract. So I'm going to give you the big three. There's a couple more, but these are the most significant ones. One is sick days, okay? The sick days that count towards your retirement pension benefit is not a guarantee of the inviolable contract. It's outside of that. And let me explain that a little bit. So the school board has a policy, and this is not subject, this is not even part of that conversation, but I'll explain to you how this works. The school board has a policy that we will pay an employee 30% of the unused sick days upon retirement, okay? Really nice, very, very nice benefit for showing up for work every day. You're not, let me dispel a myth, okay? The governor said you were hoarding your sick days, okay? That's what he said out of his own mouth, not my words, his, okay? You're not hoarding your sick days. You're coming to work every day, and thank you for doing that. Okay? It's not hoarding your sick days, because I've said to a legislator, what's the antithesis of that? He kind of looked at me like I had two heads. I said, it's using your sick days. It's staying home when you could come to work. I said, do you want people doing that? Well, no. So then we're going to be hoarding our sick days. Go ahead and accuse me of that then. You can tell that really angers me, okay? And it should anger you. So the inviolable contract, though, is a protection. So sick days, the other piece is right now, if you reach the age of 55, you get to average your 3 highest years' salary, okay, versus your 5 highest years' salary. That's at age 55. That's one of the things they're talking about doing away with, to where it's a high 5 no matter what your age is, okay? The other piece is after you work 30 years, as a means to try to encourage people to stay longer and work longer, after 30 years of service credit, you begin to earn service credit at a higher percentage, okay? That's outside the inviolable contract. So those are the big three when I talk about that. Sick days, 55, and years beyond 30, okay? So they can change those things and not violate that contract. All right, so I'm going to talk about, for a moment, the county employees retirement system, termed CERs. Roughly or approximately 50% of all of our employees, and across any school district in Kentucky, about 50%, I may plus or minus 2 or 3%, are going to be employees of the CERs retirement system, okay? So that plan includes school boards, it includes city government like the city of Owensboro, the county of Daviess, so people that work for the fiscal court are participants in that plan. People that work at OMU as municipals are members of that particular retirement system. So the way that works is the employee contributes 5%, and as the employer, we contribute 19% towards that plan and that employee's retirement. Well, how much do you think the state contributes? 0, a goose egg, okay? So, but yet it is still part of and governed by a board that is not exclusive to CERs. It's part of a board that's governed by all the other retirement systems, not TRS. Okay, it's off to itself. TRS has its own governing board, but the state employees, the state police, who's way down here at 16 and 30%, they're all part of that particular group. So again, they're 59%, so they're at the highest level of all the 8 plans. Not that that's great, but anyway, they're at the highest end of that spectrum. There's already been some changing around, manipulation, I guess, in terms of new hires, and so that's why there's not a whole lot to talk about here with respect to CERs except how they're governed, because there's been a lot of change there. If you're a new hire to that system, you're already part of a hybrid plan as it is today, so that's already changed. But these employees also participate in Social Security, okay? So they've got a dual retirement. They have Social Security and they have the CERs plan. All right, so let me kind of move down and make my case here. CERs is currently part of KRS, as we just talked about. 63% of the members in that total plan, state workers, state police, hazardous duty, CERs has 63% of the total membership, and they have 73% of the assets, okay? So to say that they're the gorilla in the jungle really does it justice, okay? They are the elephant in the room, another way of saying that. So here's the other thing. They pay more of the administrative costs to run that entire plan. Those administrative costs are higher and they continue to increase. And until recently, CERs, it's almost unbelievable, until recently CERs had no representation on the investment committee, which is the most important committee of any retirement system or pension plan, okay? Because they're managing the funds that have been invested, okay? And how that's done is very, very consequential, but they've been underrepresented. And certainly it's beyond not being proportional. So again, it's a little better funded. CERs becomes guilt by association. So what we say is that CERs needs 100% control of their plan. They need to remove the politics from that system. They need stability in management and unnecessary benefit changes. So what our position has been, and we're supported by the Kentucky League of Cities, KEA, KACO, just a number of different groups that have looked at this, is the independence of CERs so that it has its own system, okay, just like TRS does today, okay? So I'm going to switch now to teachers' retirement system because this is the one that has a whole lot more being said about because there's a whole lot more benefit changes that's being talked about and discussed. So we're going to start out in 1930. In 1930, Franklin Delano Roosevelt rolled out a social program called Social Security in this country. It still remains in place today. Well, at that point, states had an option to exempt teachers from Social Security. Some states, teachers participate in Social Security. Kentucky, at that time, looked at it and they said, you know what? We can do this less expensive than Social Security cost, and we can provide our teachers a better benefit, okay? And as I've said before, even in 1930, I know a lot of things have changed. Technology has increased a whole lot, but mathematics has sort of been a staple. So since 1930, they could add and they could subtract, multiply, and divide. They could do those basic functions that it required for an individual to do these kind of calculations. Since then, there have been numerous blue ribbon panels by different governors assigned to try to look at this system to find a different or better way, and all roads kind of keep coming back to that Social Security is more expensive for the taxpayers than teachers' retirement, Okay, and that's the moral to this story. I'll give you several different reasons why, but that's the moral to the story. So again, 1930s, TRS was created to be a more secure and less expensive system than Social Security. Movement to a 401k / Social Security model would be more expensive for taxpayers. I was talking to an individual today talking about their product, and I said, you know, if you were looking at a product that was more expensive and you were saying, you know, I got to find a better way to do this, would you go out in the marketplace and find something that's even more expensive than the product that caused the problem to start with? It kind of is illogical, okay? But that's what is being done here, all with the idea that the state, Commonwealth of Kentucky, let's just say the decision makers and a select group there want to divorce themselves of risk. Okay, that's the big thing that they keep talking about. They don't want it on their books. They're even willing to pay more. But let me tell you about the solution to pay more. This gets real interesting, okay? So the solution to pay more doesn't mean that the state pays more. Guess who winds up paying more? School boards, okay? What they're unwilling to do in Frankfort, they want us to do here in Daviess County. They want our school board members, okay, to raise their right hand to do what they're unwilling to do in Frankfort. That's appalling. That's insulting, okay? And so what I said to one of the legislators is that very thing. I said, this is insulting, all right? And I said, I can't understand this. And so I said, you know, what difference does it make to John Q. Public who is billing the tax if they're paying more? I said, it's the totality of taxes that's relevant to a taxpayer. Doesn't matter who the billing agent is, be it state government, city, county. It's the totality of it all that's relevant. And I said, the totality of Social Security is that it costs more, and it's going to cost taxpayers more. So today, I was curious about this. So today, we had a little help on this, but figured out today that it would cost, fully implemented, it would cost us about $3.2 million more a year to operate on Social Security in Daviess County Public Schools than it is today. Real dollars, okay? Then statewide, so I extrapolated that to say how much more would that have cost statewide? And it's somewhere between $170 to $185 million more per year it would cost taxpayers. So it doesn't matter if my property tax bill is going up, okay? I'm paying more taxes. That's the moral to the story, okay? And that's an important message that's getting out. People are starting to wake up and they're starting to realize that because we're talking more about it. My idea is to equip you with information. You know, I need more Indians, okay? I'm a voice of one. There's only so much I can do. But the more Indians I have on the ground that's spreading this message, and it's got to be facts, but this is factual. I can back it up. And I'll get to that here in just a moment. So let's move to this. Someone might say, well, by golly, you've just been mismanaged. The teacher's retirement system has been mismanaged. So let's look at the management of that, and let's try to identify that. Is that a problem or not? Okay. These are just quick hitters. So TRS has operated one of the most efficient retirement systems in America. It's top 10% in terms of management cost as compared to their peers across the United States of America. TRS also then provides one of the best returns on investment. I'm going to show you the details here in just a minute of all the systems across America. Lowest management cost, best return rate. Those are the things that you would measure the management of a pension system upon, okay? We're in the top 10 percentile, okay, of America. So let's prove it. Okay, so here's a graph that shows the percentage. You look at the other states up there, you see Kentucky, and oh, by the way, Kentucky and Ohio also manage a health insurance program. So when you manage a health insurance program, that means there's more administrative costs associated with that, right? It's logical. So if you look at that, we're at the lower end of those near us and around us. So let's look at the return rate. This past year, fiscal 2017 had a 15.37% return on investment. Net of expenses, a little over 15%. So then over the last course of time, that's double-digit percentage gains in 3 of the last 5 years and 5 of the last 8. Here are some very interesting points that I think you'll find. I did not know this, okay? 89% of retirees from the teachers' retirement system, guess where they live? They live in the borders of the Commonwealth. We'll call it 9 out of 10. Let's round a little bit, okay? We'll fudge that 1%. 9 out of 10 live right here in this Commonwealth. So where do they spend their money? In our local economies all across Kentucky. Look at that return rate. So for every dollar of pension benefit paid out to members, it's got a $1.43 economic impact across Kentucky. That's important. Our people live here, they spend their money here, and every dollar that goes out is coming back to us, 43% return on investment. That's pretty good. So I'm going to dispel a few myths here. So the average person out here, they think that we retire at about 45 and that we're all making 6-digit incomes off retirement, okay? That's what they think. And they also think we don't pay a dime into it, okay? I'm honest to God truth here, okay? Many of them think we collect Social Security also in addition to that. So we already knocked that myth, in the head, okay, by saying that we don't pay into Social Security. But how much of your paycheck goes into teachers' retirement? 13%. 13%. That's a pretty large number, right? To contribute and pay into this system. You put in 13% out of your paychecks, every paycheck, towards of your gross wages, all right? But myth is about mid-40s or something like that, maybe 50, okay? The average retirement age, based on what's in the portfolio of the entire teacher's retirement system, is age 59, okay? I didn't know that, but, that works to our advantage in the argument because the truth is the truth. Less than 5% retire before age 50. 4 times as many people retire at age 65 and over than under age 50. The average career, this is another interesting point, they only think we work 27. Although that we're eligible to retire at 27, the average career in fiscal 2017, okay, the year we just completed, worked more than 30 years. 59 and 30 years plus. That's the average, okay? That's an important point. All right, going back to the investment returns, so you see the 10-year return rate is 6.3%, and that goes through a great recession in 2008, 2009 that, it didn't matter what fund you had, it was tear time, okay? But we're in the top 9% of the nation during that period of time. And then over 30 years, it's got a compounded return of 8.1%, which is excellent given the type of investment portfolio that our retirement funds, there's no hedge funds, anything really crazy like that, thank goodness, that we're invested in, okay? But 8.1% over 30 years is excellent. Anybody in the room, you would take that, I promise you. Another piece, again, going back to the 6 figures, we're retiring, we got 6 figures, we're retiring with. 58% of retired teachers receive $40,000 or less in fiscal 17 with no Social Security, and 90% receive $60,000 or less, okay? 2 very important points. So I don't want to kick the legislature too hard because I want to give them a little bit of credit, okay? So this last session, the legislature voted to fund $1 billion over a 2-year period. So this past year, KTRS got $500 million, and then there'll be approximately another $500 million issued into it in fiscal 18, okay? So that 54.6% that I showed you way back at the beginning of where we were funded at today, that number's gonna go up, okay, because of this infusion of cash that's put into the fund. So I certainly give them credit for that and moving in the right direction. All right, so the PFM report proposes combining all the investments of all the pensions into one fund, which I do not like. There's an old sound investment principle called do not put all your eggs in one basket, okay? Because if something happens to the basket, everybody loses, okay? I like having our own managed government. I think they've done well, haven't they? Top 10% in the country. I don't think we can improve too much on that. I think that's a pretty good number. So I feel good about our management. We currently have a shortage of teachers now, okay? I follow national trends. It seems like Kentucky has a little bit of insulation with national trends, but although we have seen that and experienced it here locally, certainly the bigger the markets, the more shortage of teachers, but that's a nationwide deal, is that we have a shortfall of teachers going into the profession. So again, I'm just using logic. I'm trying to make sense here. I'm trying to be a logical individual. If I impact benefits to an already bad situation, don't I make it worse? I don't know. I'm just kind of using common sense here, but I think it would. I do. I really think it would. All right, so I'm going to talk about funding a little bit and then kicking the can down the road. So since 2008, KTRS has made requests to the legislature because of what's called the actuarial need, okay, that the actuary has calculated that's needed, and the state has chosen not to fund that. Now, hear me correct on this. The state has put money into the pension system, okay? They've just not put the amount of money that the actuaries, the people that have calculated what the need is, into the fund to the fullest extent, to the tune of they shorted $1.9 billion over that period of time, all right? So what happened during that period of time is that Teachers' Retirement Fund actually had to sell some assets, okay? They had to sell some investments. And if any of you kind of ever deal with the investments, you know when you sell something short, you have a penalty, okay? There's a penalty. If you have a bond and you sell it short, you pay a penalty. It comes at a cost. So if you wrap all that together, the fact that that money could have been invested in the market, earned, you know, maybe not 15%, which is this last year, but the average of 8%, when you look at what that money could have done and the theory of compounding and what happens with money, plus the losses experienced from the sale of assets, that had about a $3.8 billion effect, all right? So let's go with me in fairy tale land here for a minute. So if the legislature had funded the teachers' retirement system at the amount that was requested by the actuaries, instead of being at 54%, here's how big of a difference that makes. It's about 66 or 67%. We really wouldn't even be sitting here today because the national average is 73%, okay? We'd be in striking distance of that number very easily, okay? Critical point there to make. So when you hear about all this other stuff, no. If you put the money into it and let it start earning interest like it's supposed to in the investments, we would be in a much, much different predicament than we're in today. Okay, I want to talk about Social Security, okay? Now, some of you may even be in Social Security, okay? And that's life, okay? Well, there's a lot of folks out here in the private sector that are in Social Security. But these are just facts. Talking about unfunded liability, so I mentioned TRS is $14.5 billion, okay? That's $3,300 per household of Kentuckians across the Commonwealth. That's how much that debt, when you divide it out, that's how much it equates to. Social Security, $12.5 trillion. Okay, it's with a T, not a B. All right, but let me make that equate here. $38,000 per household for every American in the United States of America. That's a multiple of 10. So going from teachers' retirement system to Social Security is the equivalent of jumping out of a very hot frying pan into a very, 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 very to the multiple of 10 hot frying pan, okay? So honestly, that's not a good approach, okay? You don't make a bad decision based on the current set of circumstances that you find yourself in. And that's the road that, path that we're going down here. The other thing here, this is really, really important given what I just told you. Once you get in Social Security, once the federal government gets their arms wrapped around you, they do not let go. And there's reason for that. Because if they let employers decide, I want to be in, I want to be out, I want to be in, the system would be even worse shape than what it is in today, okay? So once they get their arms around you, they do not let go. It's irreversible. It's permanent. So if in the heat of the night, okay, they come through and pass this bill without full inspection about the ramifications here, I got grave concerns about that because I like to play golf, okay? I'm not a very good golfer. Okay, but thank God there's a term invented in golf called mulligans, okay? And a mulligan is more of a fancy term for what I call a do-over, okay? Let's do this again. There are no do-overs with this. There's no mulligans. Once this is passed, it's irrevocable, cannot be changed. And that's huge because there's not too many decisions you make in life that if you can't change it, boy, you would sure certainly sit down and stew over it a pretty good while. At least I would. Because if I know I can't change it and it's permanent for all eternity, or as far out as eternity would go, that's a long time. So, I said Social Security. Guess who said Social Security is more expensive? Not just me, not just the folks back in 1930, not just all the blue ribbon panels that various professionals have studied, this whole thing. The governor's own report on page 16. Is that a smoking gun? Whew, I can see the smoke coming off of it. His own consultant said that Social Security is more expensive, but he recommended it because he wants to get the state off the books. He wants it off their books, okay? That's the primary motivating factor. Here's the other thing. So I've done a little research on this. You can too. But if you look at any of the experts, what they're projecting with Social Security, because of the unfunded mandate that it's going to go up, okay? Because they have to increase the tax on Social Security. Right now it's 6.2%, okay? 6.2% of the employee's wages, and the employer matches 6.2%. That's projected to go up, both sides of that to equal 3%. So if we're already upside down cost-wise, and we increase the tax, then on Social Security, it's not only more expensive, it's more expensive, okay, of a solution. And most of the people will say in the next decade that's got to be done because of the baby boomers. They're going to bankrupt the fund, okay? So the only way to deal with this is to continue to put more money into the fund. Now, the folks in Frankfurt, if you think they're bad, just go to Washington, okay? Because you talk about kicking the can down the road. Dealing with Social Security is a political animal, okay? They've learned their lessons about that. That's why they put those ads pushing the old lady off the cliff, and they try to, because it's political suicide to talk about Social Security. They're going to wait till the thing blows up entirely, and then whoever's in administration then will be out, and then they'll bring in a whole new crowd, that will be responsible for dealing with the mess, okay? But my point for you today is this. If it's bad now in terms of being upside down with cost, it's even going to get worse into the future with that. So the last piece is, okay, in my opinion, you can't be just against something and not have a solution, okay? That doesn't work for me very well. The anti-crowd of, I'm against this, I'm against that. Well, what are you for, okay? I think it's very definable, but let me say it like this. Something does need to be done here, you all. There has to be some change, okay? The idea that a person can draw retirement longer than they worked is a fallacy. That's a fictitious land to live in. Let's just be real about that. That the economics of that just don't work, all right? If somebody tries to tell you something that's too good to be true, what is it? Okay, it's too good to be true. It means it's not real. And so what I would propose is what we did back in 2010. In 2010, the health insurance fund at that point for retirees was in crisis mode. And what we did then was what's called a shared responsibility plan. Simply what we did is the decision makers on all sides got to the table and said, how can we fix this? Okay, what are some things that we can give up that saves money? Do we pay more out of our checks? Does the employers pay more? Does the state pay more? So everybody's putting money into the pot. The other thing that's really bothering me is this. To me, and it's even larger than the pension issue, the state or the Commonwealth of Kentucky has a huge issue with revenue. Now, this last quarter, I think GDP grew, gross domestic product in America grew about 3%, which is probably the largest growth on a quarter that we've seen in quite some time. But Kentucky, you would think we're in recession mode, okay? Tax revenues are not growing. And I'm going to tell you why. We're operating a tax system in Kentucky that was done back in the 1950s. It's an agrarian tax system. Okay, we're in 2017, almost 2018. All right, nobody drives around a 1950 Chevelle. Okay, those are down in Cuba if they're driving them around right now. Okay, or they're off in somebody's farmland. But our tax system is antiquated. Let me tell you this. Last year, the state of Kentucky took in $11 billion in tax revenues. Do you know how much between deductions, exclusion, and tax credits went out the door? 14 billion. Okay? If you want a quick, easy way to fix this, let's just say, let's take 50% of all the tax credits and tax deductions that we have now. So I'm getting 7 of that 14. Over 5 years, and we had a $33 billion, it's gone. Okay? I mean, and I know that's oversimplification, but we're sending $14 billion out the door with tax credits, and I'm thinking, and they're wanting to do now a tax credit for private schools, so people can send their kids to private schools and get a tax credit. I'm going to give you the moral to the story here, and maybe I'm the grassy knoll theorist, so go with me in thought. So we had charter schools. Now they're trying to assault and take away our pension plan altogether without even trying to sit down and talk to us. And believe me, they already have a bill written to do private school tax credits, okay? I'm starting to feel, 1 + 1 + 1 is 3. I'm starting to see a trend. And I think it's an all-out assault on public schools in Kentucky. It's happened in other states. Go look at Indiana. Okay, go look at Kansas. All those things have happened there. The best case study, I'm going to go back to Social Security here for a minute. I'm going to give you a chance to ask some questions. You can look this up. The best case study to do on this Social Security thing is West Virginia. West Virginia went to a Social Security plan back in the late 90s. You know what they figured out? It didn't work. It was a bad idea. But that irreversible thing, they couldn't get out of it. But West Virginia has tried to get back into some kind of a teacher retirement plan after they kicked it to the curb. Okay, I don't like to follow West Virginia. I think we can do better than that. We have to do better than that. Because the public policy of this is you roll this thing forward for these guys. Okay, forget about me and forget about us as adults for a minute. Okay, these guys, okay, they deserve better than that. Kentucky has done some amazing things, you all, in education over the last 10-year period. I mean, we went from, thank God there was Mississippi, to, at least middle of the pack. That's good stuff. That means our people are making progress. The last thing I'll say there, and I'll be quiet, is about economic growth. Don't ever let anybody talk to you about education being a cost. Education's not an expense. It's an investment, okay? It's an investment in people. The framers, when they created public education, why did they create it? They wanted an educated populace. They wanted educated citizens who would grow and prosper and contribute to the government, okay? It's essential to economic vitality. A healthy education system is essential to economic vitality. And the very people that are talking about we need to, increase the economies in Kentucky, you're going to cripple it. With the cost that they've made with higher ed, I won't even go there. So, we got some problems in Kentucky, but this isn't the problem. The solution is that we need to fix the system that we have, and we need to come together and figure out a good way of fixing it so it's not permanent and it's sustainable moving forward. So kids are still attracted to come into this profession, invest in it, and contribute to it. And then our kids will be better off for it. And that's the bottom line, isn't it?